for your time, Wayne. That was Wayne McCurry, Portfolio Manager at FNB Wealth and Investments. Of course, I did promise you a conversation on that GDP data coming in surprising on the upside for the first quarter of 2021. And of course, we are catching up with Statistics South Africa and Business Unity South Africa. And for that conversation, I am joined by the Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke and Cas Coovadia from Busa. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen. Of course, we do have to start with the numbers. Starting with you, Risenga, just walk us through the biggest drivers of this move for the first quarter.
What we have seen that has led us to the 4.6% growth in the first quarter are mainly two sectors. That is finance on the one side. And indeed, if we look at finance, it grew by about 7.4% and contributed slightly less, in about 1.2 percentage points. Of course, there are other sectors that didn't do well, but if we look at utilities, that is electricity, gas, water, as well as agriculture, we didn't do well. But if you look at finance in the first place, as well as mining, have driven us quite strongly for the 4.6% growth.
Were there any major differences with those sectors comparing the fourth quarter of 2020 and this first quarter?
We have seen largely in your finance, it's largely your intermediation as well as areas of auxiliary activities, whereas in the area of mining, it's your platinum metal groups as well as iron ore. They have actually contributed much more stronger.
Just moving to you, Cas, thank you very much for joining us. I mean, we do know that the biggest driver of this move is finance. And we have seen banking institutions coming in and saying that they expect better earnings for their companies. What have you seen on the ground in terms of that? Does that correlate with what the numbers are saying?
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to the Statistician-General as well. Yeah, I think we are beginning to see that. I think that mortgage finance is going up, credit is going up. There has been reasonable activity in the property market, so we are beginning to see that. I think that we have to undoubtedly welcome the 1.1% increase compared to the last quarter, and essentially a 4.6% annualized growth. I think the mining industry has done very well. Finance has done well. And I think we also welcome the growth in consumer expenditure, in both in household spending as well as changes in inventories. So that has got to be a good story. But I think that what we are concerned about is that despite this growth, the economy is still smaller than it was in the first quarter of 2020. And in fact, is at the size, according to the figures released by Stat South Africa, that it was in the first quarter of 2016. So essentially, the economy hasn't grown for 5 years. And that has got to be a source of concern. And I think what we've got to do is we've got to ensure that we work together to, one, with leadership coming from government, to begin implementing urgently issues that can be implemented without any policy considerations. So some of those were the RFPs for the next tranche of renewables, which were finally released this year. Spectrum, which is now sitting in court because of procurement processes. And we've got to do more work on the ports in Durban. We've got to do more work on expediting mining exploration licenses, in expediting the time it takes to get mining licenses. So I think all of these things we can do, and we can do quickly. And I think if we do these things, then we raise confidence in the economy. Investors start looking at us again, and we can then begin to put ourselves onto a sustainable growth path at the levels necessary to improve conditions of life for people in the country.
Cas, you talk about how the economy hasn't grown in 5 years. Just talk to me about the pressure points in terms of the sectors, and if there was anything surprising to you out of those numbers.
No, mining we've seen quite a bit of activity in mining in the last few months. I think finance also, we've indications from banks was that activity was going up. I think it is disappointing that agriculture hasn't grown. I think that is disappointing. I think that the areas of gas and electricity and water industrial activity has fallen, and that's primarily because of load shedding and the intermittent water supplies that we've seen quite a bit in the last few days. It is disappointing that as a result of us not getting a handle on our energy situation, those sectors of our economy are actually not growing and in fact falling. So I don't think there's been major surprises, but I think that what it does show us is that if we do a few things right, we believe that we have the opportunity to grow the economy significantly.
Risenga, just talk to me about, I mean, obviously this figure is a national figure, but just talk to me about the different provinces and, you know, the star performers and those that are still under pressure. Of course, we do know that each province has specific sectors that it relies on. So just talk to me about the differences there, the star performers and the provinces that have not performed that well.
Sorry, is that for me or is that
no,
for
that's
the
for
statistician? Yeah, that's
okay. Let us look at the provinces. As of the end of last year, that is 2020, we released the performance of the provinces, but that performance of the provinces had a lag of a year, so going back to 2019. Firstly, you can see that Gauteng accounts for about a third of the size of the economy of our country. It accounted for about 34%, and it is followed by the Western Cape at 16%, and followed by KwaZulu-Natal at 12%. Those are the three provinces that are actually taking a larger chunk. Provinces like the Northern Cape and the Free State take a smaller chunk of our economy. Now, back to which ones performed a lot more stronger. I would say that provinces that have a diversified kind of an economy had performed quite well at the time. And if you look at a province like Gauteng, it's only agriculture and mining that are not very strong, but finance and other sectors, trade, manufacturing are much more stronger. But in provinces where you rely largely on agriculture, like your Free State, your Eastern Cape, and Limpopo has a bit of mining and agriculture, they didn't show much stronger growth. That is the first part. The second part is I want us to go back to the point of our economy being at the level where it was around 2016. So during this first quarter, one of the things we have seen is that the real GDP is sitting at about 761 billion compared to where it was in the first quarter of 2016, sitting at 764 billion. The last time we had the highest of that was first quarter of 2020, sitting at about 782 billion. So while we are actually seeing recovery out of the COVID-19, we haven't actually moved that strong back to where we were. And when you look at the way our economy has been performing every year, it has been performing from about 1.4% in 2017. And from there, it has been declining all the way. Last year, 2020, when we returned the annual numbers, it had actually gone in the negative by, about 7%. So if you ask me, our economy has been slowly declining, including having recessions even before COVID-19. And I think COVID-19 has just put it a lot more under pressure.
Cas, just one last one for you. Of course, you are sitting with a man who has all the information. Any information that you'd like to get out of him today?
Well, no, we'd obviously look at the information carefully, but I think that you know, it is gratifying that the information and the data released by Stats South Africa is not out of line with what is actually happening on the ground and what some of the expectations were. I think that we depend on Stats South Africa's data, and data is always relevant and accurate. But we will obviously go into this a bit more detail and interact and get more data if we need to. But I think that we just need to note the Statistician-General's concern as well, that the economy has been gradually declining and getting smaller. And in the midst of the significant socioeconomic challenges we have in the country, we need to urgently deal with that problem.
Of course, and all eyes are on Operation Vulindlela as well to bring about those structural reforms. But thank you so much for the conversation, gentlemen. That was Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke and Cas Coovadia, the CEO of